All right, welcome to Mastering the Middle Game, or as I like to call it, Grandmastering the Middle Game. So today we're going to look at 3 games I've never seen before, except I saw the middle one already. So that's close. What would Meatloaf say? There you go. Yeah. Yeah, what's wrong with you people? No, the usual. Okay, now these middle games are going to concentrate on checkmating attacks. The only thing you understand. If I'm like, white has a slight advantage, you're like, wait a minute, I want to know what several of those words mean. Slight advantage, white has, the. Oh, we have a fellow grandmaster walking, that's good. Okay, slightly late even though he's early. Terrible. Okay, obviously Ken West. Okay, so first game is from Foxwoods, a tournament which no longer exists, but it used to exist. And when it did exist, it was over Easter. And then Foxwoods casinos like, get out, chess players are cheap. So now, then they had nothing, now they have a tournament in Philadelphia, I don't know. Okay, and then, you know, nobody knows what Easter is anyway. Okay, so this is Nakamura Shabalov from 2005, when Nakamura was a good attacking player and Shabalov was less old. Okay, so the players were slightly better. Now they played a boring Queen's Gambit declined, sort of like, didn't you show, where'd he go? Didn't you show Queen's Gambit declined?
I did.
Yeah, and then he played C takes D5 in your lecture. Well, it was the same thing. Okay, now in this position, I'll say John Strand. Yeah. In John Stranz's lecture, Black played Bishop F5. If Black doesn't play Bishop F5 now, he'll never play it. Now I have an aside, which he may or may not record. Which lecture are you putting on the web first, his or mine? His? Okay, so you've seen John's lecture several hours ago, and now you know that Bishop F5 was played in the game Carlsen-Kramnik. I wasn't really participating in the lecture, I was busy on Hotwire. Also, I already analyzed the game with Fabiano Caruana. And he was like, how did white get F5? And he was all mad. It's like, Kramnik's the worst. Okay, and it turned out Kramnik isn't the worst, but it's close. Okay, so if you don't play Bishop F5 now, you're never going to play it. And of course, Shabalov played Bishop D6, and you suggested Bishop E7 was the most common. And Nakamura played Bishop D3. Now Bishop F5 is risky. Okay, you might pre-move it in a 1-minute game, but Queen C2 beats you, Bishop D3 beats you, so yeah. Okay, so the problem is, Black doesn't have a great square for his bishop, but after knight F3, Shabalov's like, oh, I'll play bishop to G4. I can't go to F5, D7 is silly, E6 is silly because it blocks the rook, G4 is great. Now you may have noticed one of the two players, white, decided not to castle because he didn't know where to castle yet. Well, since Black played H6, it's very difficult for Black to trade off the bishops, which he likes to do, by playing Bishop H5 to G6, because then he just loses a pawn. White has too much force there. Well, if Black plays Bishop G4, and he's not going to play Bishop H5 to G6, what else is he going to do? Take on F3. So Nakamura's like, well, if you're going to open the G file, then I'll castle queenside. You'll open the G file. I'll mate you. I'll mark the result up. It's an American Swiss. There's no arbiter that comes, you know. Okay, this was a long time ago. And Shabalov's like, yay, it's sharp. I like sharp. And then he's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm playing Nakamura. Darn. Okay, so knight BD7. And he's like, H3, let's go take my knight. I dare you. I double dare you. And then, in a very strange coincidence, Nakamura said, do they speak English and what? Very strange conversation they had. Okay, so Bishop H5 to G6 loses a pawn. White just plays G4, Matt Larson style. Bishop E6 is a strange move because it blocks the rook on E8, and also White got H3 in for free, so White's going to play G4 and attack. So he took the knight. Okay, White's pawn structure is meh, but White has two advantages. He's got the open G file, and he's got the two bishops. Okay, White's king is pretty safe. Queen A5. Now, anybody who is my student or has listened to my lectures and has less brain damage than most of you at home remembers my rule, always play King B1. Very good. Nakamura knew that rule before I espoused it. I guess that's why he's top 10 in the world, and you guys are top 10 in, well, some of you are top 10 in the room. More than half of you. All right. Usually don't give the audience a hand, but they're, oh, wait a minute. Somebody just came in. Oh, now less of you are in the top 10. Okay, so king b1. Now a2 is defended forever. So if my knight wants to do stuff and I'm running away with my pieces, you're never going to play queen a2. Okay, and I wasn't really sure if you were never going to take on a2, so I asked En Vogue, and they said never going to take on a2. And I was like, all right. And then like 2 people got it. And at home, only 1 person got it. Well, Darian got it too. He laughed a little, right? A little bit. Okay. So, and the rest of you are never going to get that joke. Never going to get it. No, never going to get it. Okay. So king b1, and obviously since white played king b1, black resigned. Now we'll go to the next game. Oh, he didn't resign. Oh, never mind. Okay. Shabalov played bishop e7, retreating like a Frenchman. Now, why would you play bishop e7? You got me. I'm guessing Shabalov wants to move his knight. Either knight f8 defending or knight b6 attacking. And if you move your knight now, bishop takes f6 is good for white. So bishop e7, then we'll move our knight. Okay, rook g1, very obvious. Now this is a middle game where we castle opposite sides. In those middle games, whoever checkmates their opponent usually does pretty well. I'll let you write that down if you're taking notes. Okay, and when one side is attacking and the other side is defending, and the side you're playing against never attacks you, Yasser Serin would say it's a free attack. And so Shabalov played rook a d8. I don't know what that's got to do with anything. And rook g2, caveman chess, double rooks, and crush him on the g file. King h8, double rooks, rook g8. Okay, man, in Bughouse, even black's losing even worse. Okay, and Nakamura can't really do any more. That's all he can stands. He can't stands no more. Doesn't like spinach. So e4. He's trying to win on the king's side. Now he's winning in the center. This is the other problem with taking this knight. It helps white strengthen his center. And I'm sure it reminds all of you, it doesn't remind any of them, about the Bronstein-Larsen variation of the Caro-Kann, right? Well, one person nodded, and then he looked like this. You be careful, I'm watching Lie to Me, so I can tell by your facial expressions, you're like, what's Bronstein, what's Larsen, what's the Caro-Kann, what's defense, what's chess, what's the black pieces, why am I here? Okay, I can tell that from your facial expressions. All right, so white wants to play e5, and then black would resign. Because otherwise your position is even worse than resigning, losing a piece. Okay, so they traded on e4, and now if I play e5, at least you can play knight d5 since your pawn's not there. So white has everything. White has an attack, white has 2 bishops, white has the better center, and white's king is perfectly safe. I thought this guy was the 4-time US champion. What happened? Okay, even in 2005 he was old. Man, it's harsh. Okay, Nakamura played a slightly different style in open tournaments. In open tournaments, if you have 4 wins and 5 draws, then you lose 5 rating points and they shake your hand and you go home. In the Singfield Cup and the US Championship and the Norway Chess, when you have 4 wins and 5 draws, you win. So this is an open tournament, so Nakamura has to win every game. We can't be drawing. So a lot of the games are a little more swashbuckling. Okay, so knight f8, and now we see why the rook's on d8, attacking the weak d pawn. Black has a lot of pieces defending his king. So that's not so bad. Okay, bishop c4, attacking the new weakness. I tell all of my students, and if any of them ever listen to me, I won't teach them anymore, but since they don't listen, I can give them the same lesson over and over again. Okay, and if you look at all of black's pieces and pawns, you try to find ones that aren't defended. And usually in chess, there's 1 or 2, usually. Okay, so in this position, if we can highlight, okay, did I do it right or I did it wrong? I didn't say I could do it right, but I could try. I think I did it right. Those are the 4 things that aren't defended. And usually when you castle king side, this pawn's defended a lot. It's defended by a rook and a king, but those things moved away. So Nakamura wants to take this for free. That's very easy to defend. Yeah, I don't see a good way to defend it. Okay, so g5, counterattack. And This was the star move of the game. I'm sure you would all play it. That means they wouldn't play it. Okay, so everybody and their 2,500 rated, siblings would play bishop to g3. Okay, although then the rooks aren't as good as they were. Okay, Nakamura played much more aggressively with bishop take. That's too aggressive. Yeah. Very good. You should teach here. Yeah, f4. So now we have a lot of guys on g5, you must admit. And now, if they take our bishop, our queen's coming into the game because our pawn's not on f2 anymore. Now, I actually play the queen's gambit declined with white. Occasionally, I castle queenside. And when I do, I notice when my f-pawn moves, my queen can go to g2. In the Dragon Sicilian, which I'm sure you were all thinking, they weren't thinking it. When white plays f3 on move 7 or 8 in the Yugoslav attack, often white plays g4, h4, and sometimes the queen goes to h2, and you give them the hammer. Not the hammer, that's in Norway, the hammer. So if I can give you a sample variation, let's say he takes this, that's a good sample. Wow! Or I could, and Ben Simon's not here. So let's never go back. Okay, so I think that was a coincidence. So let's say he takes the bishop, I would take the rook, probably you play knight takes. King takes is illegal, king here is risky. Okay, then I play something like queen's g2, for example, threatening mate and mate. I'm guessing knight g6. And then I assume f5 wins, and I assume bishop f7 more wins. And then black super resigns because he's a super grandmaster. So he resigns differently than you do. Okay, so black doesn't want the g file open, but black played g5. So yeah, that'll teach him. So he blocked the g file more. Knight g6, 5-time US champion, or 4-time? Something like that. Okay, man, I can't make that joke, darn. And moving on. Okay, so now this bishop is attacked a lot. For example, knight takes bishop. See how that worked? Okay, now in they don't know. I don't know. Every 2 years. Every 2 years, the Michigan Chess Association inducts someone into the Chess Hall of Fame, the Michigan Chess Hall of Fame. What an honor. I was inducted last year. And many, many years ago, Paul Pochel was inducted, and he played the 1949 US Championship, and he was rated over 2,300 for 50 years. And he's still alive. Doesn't play anymore. And he gave a speech for some reason. And he said, my favorite player ever was Capablanca, and I found out his chess secret. Remember, it's important to be crazy to be good. And he said his secret was he always did things in pairs. He understood the power of 2. Every move he made had 2 ideas. And then his opponents couldn't thwart that, so they would lose. Okay, then they shackled him up and took him off to the, they're like, yeah, your speech is over. Okay, now Nakamura must have heard that speech because he made one of those Capablanca-like moves. Okay, very good move. And again, it's the kind of move you wouldn't suspect because it's a retreat. And so white played, hey, quiet at home, they can hear you. Bishop e1. Now, the bishop's not attacked. This pawn's attacked a lot. And we're going to do some discovered attack on your queen. Pretty good square for the bishop. Yeah, that'll teach his queen to be there. By the way, f7 still attacked if you forgot, which you did. Also, I did. So this is attacked, discovered attack, and white didn't sacrifice anything. Crazy. Okay, so Shabalov played knight f4. White played the most aggressive move ever that's ever been played. Louder. Knight where? D5. Yeah, knight d5. Now every piece is attacked. I'll let Ken West count all of them. Yeah, you could, this is attacked, and this, and most importantly that. All right, now, this isn't defended, and this is attacked, and I don't see a square the queen can move to that defends the bishop. Unless you do. There's a lot of you, there's only one of me. And most of you are in the top 10. So. Okay, so sometimes you got to lose your queen. You hear me talking, Ken West? He's like, yeah. Yeah, you can suggest now. So, okay, so Shabalov took the bishop, and then Shabalov had a choice of taking this or this. He's like, wow, what a choice. I would have taken the rook, because then I'm threatening this rook and this knight. Although I probably would have resigned already. I'm assuming they both get totally crushed, because the knight on e1 is going to be trapped. You lose your bishop. But I think knight g2 was a better try, still losing. But he took the knight, because now he's threatening the rook and the bishop. Okay, and he has 2 pieces for a rook. 2 pieces for a rook. He has 2 pieces for a queen. Who dares call me? Okay, during my lecture. All right, so white took the pawn, discovered attack on the bishop. So if you take the rook, I'll take the bishop, and then all these pawns are hanging, and the knight's hanging, and you're down a queen. So black attacked more with bishop b4, attacking both rooks, confusing the audience. The audience is like, wait, what's the material here? I'm confused. Well, at least black's king is sort of safe. But white has a queen for 2 knights, and the pawns are equal, but white has both rooks hanging. The one's defended. So rook f1, again, if you take the rook on g2, I could play rook takes f6, for example, or I could go back several moves, because that's what this computer engine likes to do, likes to go back. Okay, so if I take the rook, don't go back this time, good. I would take this, threatening rook h6, rook f7, and queen g2, and I'm up a queen for a rook and a knight. So that's really winning for white. Okay, so black played rook ge8. Now his rooks are in the center, so black's doing great. No. Okay, and a3 attacking the bishop, and queen f5 attacking the knight, and he's all over black. And now it's just a queen for 2 knights. And some people, like me, don't like to resign, so black didn't resign. And after h4, he's like, man, things are getting worse. Like, what happened over here? Now, of course, the only move that makes any sense is f6, but due to my rule, never play f6, black resigned. Very nice. Good resigning. Yeah. Okay, because down a queen for 2 knights isn't any fun. So that was a nice attack from Hikaru, because well, that king looked really safe. I don't think black did anything. That king was just sitting on b1 all happy. That king was on c1, black would have won 1,000,000 times over. But on b1, nothing. Does anybody believe me? Yeah. I believe you. Okay, now this was a short game, but it wasn't played by Nigel Short, The Mysteries of Life. Was Nigel Short born? 63, 64. Yeah. I'm going to say no. Wow, 69, carry the 1. I think he was born in 65. He might have been born in 64, but if he was, it was after this is 63, 64. Right, so you at home was Short alive during Fischer's 11-0 run. Okay, anyway, this was one of the 11-0 games against my pal Benko, and your pal too. Yeah, the delayed reaction, very good. Okay, what would the guy on Lie to Me say? I don't know. Okay, so Benko played as passively as possible, giving Fischer the center. Good idea. And this is called the Austrian attack. And in the Austrian attack, black has several ways of playing. People nowadays like to castle and play c5. And Benko played bishop g4. Most grandmasters nowadays like their bishops. They don't just give their bishops away like, I don't know, Ben Simon. Okay, now bishop g4 is still played today, but it's very rare because white gets a lot of bishops. Grandmasters like bishops more than you do. Even grandmasters who play a lot of bughouse like bishops, just not in bughouse. Okay, so h3, very similar to Nakamura's game. And now, since white was not Mikhail Tal, he took with the queen. And you know which game I'm referring to. Typical class. Tal Botvinnik, one of their 50 World Championship matches, in the Karo Khan on move 4, 1, 2, 3, on move 5, Tal played g takes f3 instead of queen takes for no reason. Just, why not? Play Botvinnik. And they drew, but very suspicious. Okay, so now they just play normal chess, mastering the middle game. And this is very important for you and possibly you at home, although you have to wake up. You, yeah, wake up. Okay, one guy was asleep. Okay, and wait, hold on, one guy's at his fridge now, let me wait. Okay, you're back from the fridge, good timing. In the positions where you have pawns on d4, e4, and f4, which happens in the King's Indian, in the Pirc, in the Modern, etc., and black plays e5, there's two standard ways for white to play. You take on e5 one way, and then you push the other pawn. So in some variations, you take this way, and then you play d5. But in this variation, we're going to checkmate our opponent, because I was informed that that wins the game. So you take this way and play f5. Okay? You always want black to have a pawn here, because then the bishop isn't doing anything, and the knight isn't doing anything. And I have a lot of women who will tell you, I'm the master of not doing anything. So I know how not to do anything. And of course, we could have the pawn here if he had taken with the f pawn. I hope you're okay over there, Ken West. You see what I did? Okay. But, I mean, if you want to checkmate the guy, it's good to have pawns over there. Okay, so he took on f5, which I would never consider. And this is like the US Championship, and he's better than me. Okay, see? He's better than me. And yeah, so I got nothing. I'd rather have white here because white has two bishops, and the bishop on g7 is pretty bad, but I would never play gf. I would never think of gf. Okay, so Fischer's like, yum, yum, yum. Now we have open diagonal over here, and we got open file over here, half open file. Actually, this is the half open file. And that bishop's still terrible. It's blocked by the e pawn. Okay, so don't blink, because this game ends in about 5 moves. Oh, some of you blinked. Okay, knight to d4. Now, as I've said many times, and I say the same thing over and over and over again, you still forget it. When I teach kids and there's a legal capture, they play it. So if I was in Charlotte, or if I was in Nashville, which I'll be in a couple of days, or 2 weeks ago for you, right? Is that about right? Yeah. Then bishop takes knight is forced. There is no other move. Okay, but that's not the best move, because then you sort of open things up for black. You open up the e file. The bishop gets a little better. The pawn's here. So we can just play queen f2 and chill. Okay, sort of like Netflix, but less chilling. Okay, and then Benko played knight e8. His knight wants to go to d6. He pretends he wants to play f5. He stops bishop g5, pinning his knight. Castles, the only game in the lecture where we castle kingside. Knight d6, queen g3. That doesn't look very nice, does it? Okay. So if you remember Nakamura's game, it was 7 or 8 minutes ago. When the g file was opened, Shabalov played king h8 and rook g8. He must have learned from this game. He lasted longer than Benko. Very impressive. Okay, and now queen g4, which I like, is you just play queen g3. That's pretty awesome. c6 doing nothing. Queen h5. He wanted the queen on the h file since the king is there, but queen h4 previous move was very risky. So queen h5 is safer. Well, this is the problem with not having a knight on f6. Then you don't control h5. Usually your knight's on f6, and they're not playing queen h5 against you. That's why Nakamura plays queen h5 on move 2. Okay. All right, so queen e8, threatening to discovered attack and trade queens, and black has no problems. Bishop takes knight, pawn takes, and since I have a blue water, it's time to pause. Those of you who have seen the game, which is most of you, yeah, I was kidding over there, will know what white played here. And I would probably say 2 or 3 of you have seen the game and you all forgot. So that's good. Right, Ken West?
I've not seen the game,
but you saw what you forgot.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't see the threat. If you play e5, are you threatening h7? Say yes.
Yes.
Then how does black stop it?
Maybe F5.
Maybe f5. Then your queen's attacked by my queen. Remember in Nakamura's game there was a bishop on e1 threatening the queen on a5? Now it's the reverse angle. I got one in for Peter there. The queen on e8 is attacking the queen on h5. If you trade queens and you think you're going to take my knight, I'm going to take your knight. And you're not going to mate me when you trade queens. And after f5, if you take en passant, I'll play queen takes queen. So after e5, f5, black is okay. Now those of you who know me and are at least 2,500 strength know that in the Sicilian Velimirovic attack, I like to play queen e8 instead of the theoretical queen c7. And the reason is, when I move my f pawn, I'm attacking your queen, just like here. Every opening is the same somehow. Now, Fischer wanted to mate on h7, but Fischer didn't want black to play f5, giving the answer away. Yeah, that's what Ken West would play.
I have seen this game.
Ah, see? Very good. Now, it's hard to play f5 unless you do a lot of cheating. And when I play e5, it's going to be really hard to not get mated. What's funny is, if you leave your bishop here and don't take my rook, then when I play e5, you can play h6 because you're defending it, although rook h6 really kills you. If you don't take my rook, your knight's hanging, by the way. Also, e5 checkmates you. So rook f6 pretty good. Not a bad move. Benko played king g8. His king will run away through his queen and rook. So for example, bishop f6. When I do this, it's going to go back like 20 moves, just so you know. I already did this once, and it went to somebody else's lecture.
All right, should we place bets here?
Wow, it's gonna, I don't know what's gonna happen. Oh, nothing happened. It happened last time. Now after e5, unleashing the latent potential of the bishop. I said that because I saw the obituary about Emery Tate in Chess Life today. So, for those of you who don't know, Emery Tate was one of the funniest guys ever, and pretty good at chess, more funny. And Emery Tate was giving a lecture, which means he walked into a room and just started lecturing himself, and people started listening. And my friend was there, and he said the latent potential of some piece. And my friend said, how can a piece have latent potential? What are you talking about? And Emery Tate said, if you had more than an 8th grade education, you would know the difference between latent potential and actualized potential. And then he went back to his lecture. The friend in question he was talking to has like 4 master's degrees. So. Anyway, well, now it's hard to stop mate. You know what I mean? Very hard. You could computer it and like block, and then get mated in 2 moves instead of 1. Okay, so Benko played. Yeah, there we go. I'm not sure who won that bet now.
I didn't bet on that.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Okay, so black played king g8, and white played e5, and black played the move that stops queen h7 mate. h6, right. Now, if the king was on h8, I would play rook h6 here. No, really. Now, if you play rook h6, maybe black can play f5 again. Maybe. So Fischer's like, hey, my knight's attacked. I just noticed that. And played knight e2. Now, white's going to checkmate you by playing rook h6 and such. But more important than mate, white's going to play rook takes knight. And usually when your opponent's up a knight and you're getting mated, that's bad. And if you move your knight away because you don't want to lose your knight, right? Then queen f5 is annoying. Man, it's really annoying. But knight on d6 stops queen f5. So as long as black doesn't move and white doesn't move, black's okay. But if white moves, white takes a free knight, and if black moves, white mates him. So knight e2 is a really cool final move. He's like, hey, my knight's hanging. Now I win everything. Most people just keep attacking and give all their pieces away and don't care. And Fischer's like, hey, I can attack for free. In fact, even though white sacrificed his rook on f6, his knight on c3, they weren't captured. White was never behind anything. White just started attacking. And black's like, no. Now, when you're getting attacked on the king's side, and you play king h8 and then king g8, you're probably going to lose. Probably that's not the right, yeah. And so Benko resigned, I think, yeah. And you did see that game. And what book did you see it in?
William Little sent it to me on the Facebook thing. He said, what move here? And he said, Fischer played rook f6.
And then you still were going to play e5.
Right.
When I show it to you next month, what are you going to play?
e5.
I know. Yeah, the truth hurts. Okay, and last but not least, I'm afraid to leave this because then Ben's going to see all this craziness. It's the craziness. No! God. Wait, that's not that crazy. That's okay. Okay, now this game I didn't know. This is a game between Velimirovic and Ljubojevic in the Yugoslavian Championship. Shocking. In 1972. Now, Velimirovic was a wild and crazy player. Steve Martin learned everything he knew from him. And Ljubojevic was a better player, but sometimes when your opponent's wild and crazy, they mate you. Okay? And here White sacked all of his pieces. He thought he was playing Bug House. He was misinformed. Okay, they played the crazy Sicilian. And you all know the Velimirovic variation of the what's it called? The classical Sicilian. You're supposed to all say, what are you talking about? Okay. In the Sozin Sicilian, when White plays bishop c4, when Fischer played the Sozin, also known as the Fischer Sozin, he would castle kingside. Velimirovic would play bishop e3, queen e2, and castle queenside. That's the Velimirovic attack. That's if Black plays knight c6. Black played a6, which is the Najdorf. But let's look at a game that I would play, or we could just do this and lecture never ends. Okay, knight c6. Cancel. Wait, I meant to put insert. No, new variation. Bishop c4, e6, bishop e3, bishop b3, castles here. And this is the Velimirovic attack invented by Velimirovic. And he would push all his kingside pawns and mate you. And then you'd be like, man, I lost. The last game I lost that was rated was in this position against Sam Savian. Man, you should lecture here, really. I'm serious. Yeah. And that's the tournament where he became a grandmaster. He already had all his grandmaster norms, but he needed to be 2,500 FIDE. Now he's like 2,580 FIDE. Okay, and that was in November 2014. And he sacked a piece as quickly as possible. He might have played g4 first, but he went here as soon as he could. And then I was up a piece and got mated. Okay, so it was a very smart idea of me to take America's youngest grandmaster, play the sharpest line possible. Okay, now Ljubojevic played a6, the Najdorf, and Velimirovic played the sharpest, wild and crazy line. Okay, this is normal theory. And he played bishop d3. Even crazier is g4. In fact, g4 is probably more common. But okay, bishop d3 develops a piece. b5, rook e1. Okay, now White was getting very antsy because White hasn't sacrificed anything yet. So we gotta start sacrificing. It's not even clear which side Black will castle on. Okay, and this looks like a normal Sicilian position, but Sicilian's a dangerous opening. Sometimes you lose in one move. You miss something and your pieces all go away. Okay, so White played knight to d5. It's been a while since he sacrificed, probably since the last game. Okay, and if you take on d5, you're opening up the e file to your king and the knight goes to f5. So that's a little dangerous. Okay, so he took with the knight, keeping everything closed. And this looks like we're going to trade a lot of pieces and Black's king will be perfectly safe. Now, if Larry Evans was here, and he would look sort of strange, he's been dead for years, but if he was here, he would say, you got to take pieces, you got to accept the sacrifice, otherwise White got a free attack. So, I mean, if I was Black, I would just take this and lose. I would not be a piece up. You could be a piece up or not a piece up, so you got to be a piece up. So you got to take the knight and hope for the best, and if that loses, then you got to go back to the drawing board and play better in the opening. Okay, so knight takes, pawn takes. White hasn't sacrificed anything. Terrible. Bishop takes g5. And now, most of you would recapture without thinking. In fact, most of you do everything without thinking. Okay, I agree, that's good policy. But if you recapture, how are you sacking all your pieces? If you want to be down 3 or 4 pieces, but you're not really effective, Ken West, experience. Right? You've been down 3 or 4 pieces more than anybody. I hope.
Integrating possible.
Yeah, exactly. So rook takes e6 check, just what you were thinking. When my opponent plays rook takes e6 check and I didn't see it coming, then I'm like, man, this isn't good. This isn't going to turn out well for me. All right, takes. That knight's pretty reasonable on e6. Black's never going to castle, assuming you know the castling rules. If you're in the 1 o'clock class, you can castle either way. Okay, so the knight stops castling, the knight threatens the queen, the bishop's attacked a lot, and White's only down a rook, but those rooks aren't, I'm not scared of those rooks. In fact, I'm not scared of any of Black's pieces. All right, well, the queen's sort of important, so he moved his queen, shocking. And queen h5 check, man, this is tough. So do I play king e7 and let him take with check, or do I play g6 and let him mate me and win all my pieces and rooks? The answer is fries. No, I don't know. So he played g6, and I would think bishop takes g6 is the obvious move, but he played queen takes g5. I guess he can play bishop takes g6 next move. Let him think about it. That looks completely winning. White's down a rook, but black's king is perpetually getting checkmated. Okay, so he played rook g8. Now that stops bishop g6. Now one of my ex-wives, I don't know which one, because they both played chess, when they were black in a Sicilian, they would often play rook g8. And I said, don't do that. Okay, and yeah, you're going to find out why. Okay, although when they did it, it was even worse. This actually stops bishop g6 check, so it has some merit. Okay, rook d2, that's my favorite move of the game. Okay, white wants to play Morphy style, rook e1 with mate. If you watch every second of all of my lectures, you'll remember in the Karpov-Korchnoi lecture from their candidates match in '74, that there was a position where Karpov could play rook e1, which looked really strong, but the refutation was the same as it is here. Queen takes rook checkmate. Yeah. So rook e1 looks good, but like Anna Kournikova, it never wins. So looks good, never wins. All right. So instead of rook e1, white decided to play rook e2. So he played rook d2, and the rook's going to e2, and then that's very annoying. And one of the problems lower-rated players have when they sacrifice material, intentional or not, is they're in a big hurry. If I don't mate him right now, I'm down a rook. And Velimirovic isn't in a hurry because he has this knight on e6. So he's like, well, that king's there forever. This rook's here forever. Like, I'm just going to mate him when I feel like it. The knight can't go to e5 because there's a pawn here. Now, this is actually a funny game because Ljubojevic is a pretty good player. Probably top 10 in the world in the 70s. And in fact, when Ljubojevic was 61 years old, he beat Hikaru with black. So he's not a bad player. And Ljubojevic stopped the attack, but he gave so much material away, he was actually lost in the endgame, which is pretty funny because he's up a rook. But you know, you don't want to get mated, so you have to give some pieces back. Okay, knight f8, Bent Larsen approved. Knight takes f8. Which way should we take? They both look just terrible. Like if you take with the king, I got queen f6 and rook e2. If you take with a rook, I got rook e2 and I'm going to e7. So he played queen d8. Yeah, I think taking just gets checkmated. Queen d8, now black trades queens and black was a rook up. Was a rook up. Now white has a knight and 2 pawns for a rook, and he still has the same issues. So this is really cute. He plays knight takes h7, threatening knight f6 check, trades queens, and now we indirectly defend d5 because of knight f6. So now white has a knight and 3 pawns for a rook, and he's still attacking. So it's still, white's ahead material now. King f7, stopping knight f6, knight f6 anyway. g3, defending the h-pawn, discovered defense. h4, and yeah, black could have resigned because he's almost ready for the next game. Okay, now the knight went from the beautiful e6 square to the more beautiful f6 square, stopping black from getting on both open files for his rooks. But that's okay, black still has lots of weak pawns. So, and white has a 3-to-1 pawn majority. So we went from a middle game where we had a big attack and we're mating to black giving all the material back to avoid getting mated, but with a dead lost endgame. It's too bad. Bishop f5 doesn't really stop the attack. Yeah, rook, and then, yeah. All right, and then actually Ljubojevic didn't resign. The arbiter said, okay, that's enough. He's like, I don't want to see any more. Yeah, because you're going to lose this, and then, yeah. There's some things you don't want to know, important things. So that was funny because Velimirovic developed all of his pieces, and he's like, all right, sack on e6, sack on d5, sack everywhere, and black's king was just awful. In the other games, black actually castled, and it was easy to sort of attack his king by opening the G file with files and diagonals. Here, black's king was in the center. We didn't know which way he would castle. So he just opened up the center, put his knight on E6, and said, you can't castle. Now, sometimes that doesn't work, and you're just down a lot of pieces. When it does work, though, it looks great. Okay? And this is the problem a lot of people have with our fantastic players, like Morozevich and like Velimirovic and Emery Tate, and a lot of people who are wild attacking players who win a lot of brilliant games. Don't look at their other games that they lost. We're not looking at those. So the problem is when the attack doesn't work, you're like, why'd that guy give all his pieces away? When the attack does work, you're like, wow, that guy's great. Okay, and you can learn a lot from the first match played in 85? 85? Yeah, between Karpov and Kasparov, you had sort of the boring player versus the wild attacking player. And after 29 games, the wild attacking player didn't look so good. Okay, 5 losses and 24 draws. You'd expect Kasparov to win 1 game out of 29. Maybe 1. And so sometimes wild attacking play doesn't work, but unlike some of you, White got all of his pieces developed and put them on the right squares and then started sacrificing. Okay, he played rook he1, bishop d3, and then he started pushing his pieces, and there were too many pieces for black to deal with. Black eventually evaded the attack, but ended up in a lost endgame, which happens often. You get all your material back and you're just easily winning. And well, if you're a novice player, this may not look simple to you, but luckily I can dribble in here because I'm foaming at the mouth looking at White's position. I would be expecting lots of queens because yeah, you just rook, knight, and pawn just do that. And if you put this on an engine, if I had an engine, I would show you. I probably do have an engine. It's going to say something like +8. Like in your mind, it's +2, but it's not. Yeah. All right, and Ljubojevic resigned, and somehow we've heard of him, and nobody's heard of Velimirovic. No, I'm just kidding. You haven't heard of either one of them. I'm just kidding. All right, that's mastering the middle game with grandmasters. So now you're all confused. Let's split the difference and just say international mastering the middle game. See you next week.